Shalom, I'm Rabbi Jeff from the Rock of Israel congregation, and this week going to look at something from this week's parasha of Vayechi. It's you could read it. It's Genesis chapter 47:27 through chapter 50:26. It's the end of the book of Bereshit of Genesis, the final Torah portion, and we don't normally cover them here, but this week I thought it would be really good because there's a great lesson in here, and it ties in with Brit Chadashah, New Covenant teaching. That is absolutely wonderful for anyone, anytime to remember. So we're going to start off, I think, with Joshua. He's going to be reading specifically from chapter 50, verse 15 through 21.
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and will fully pay us back for all the evil which we did to him." They sent a message to Joseph, saying, "Your father commanded before he died, saying, 'So you shall tell Joseph, now please forgive the disobedience of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. Now please forgive the disobedience of the servants of the God of your father.'" Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, "Behold, we are your servants." Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, and to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore don't be afraid. I will nourish you and your little ones." He comforted them and spoke kindly to them.
That is awesome. In light of the entire story of Yosef, from when we first meet him through the cherished coat of many colors, to the incidents of strife between him and his brothers, to them wanting to kill him, throwing him in a pit, selling him into slavery, and then, interpreting dreams, getting thrown into prison, falsely accused of, trying to have his way with Potiphar's wife, and so on, all the way up to the interpretation of of the dream Pharaoh had that no one else could interpret, spending additional time in prison, finally getting out and being elevated to viceroy or second in command, only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt, saving not only Egypt through the terrible 7-year famine that came, but also his people. And the parsha concludes just a few verses later with the death of Yosef. But I chose these verses in particular because it ties in perfectly with Romans 8:28, that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. Question number 1, do you love the Lord? If you can say that honestly, then you are called according to his purposes. Whether you realize it or not, you may not be called to the same service that I am or somebody else is, but you are called. You absolutely are called. We're all told to go, teach, baptize, and disciples, to make disciples of all men. What's a disciple? It's a follower of Yeshua. It's a Talmudim. It's a person who is trained up and raised up in the Torah, in the ways of the Lord. And it's all about Yeshua. And to be a disciple, you have to have somebody that's willing to teach. And we're all called to that on one level or another. So I want to highly encourage you. It's 2023 now. The world is getting crazier by the minute. Challenges abound at everywhere you look. It's everywhere. I'm afraid things probably aren't going to get much easier, but you, if you love the Lord, are called according to his purposes. And as we learn from the story of Yosef, even the most horrible things that he endured His own brothers plotted to kill him. They sold him into slavery. He was in prison, falsely accused. Horrible. I'm willing to bet if you're watching this, there's a 99.9% chance you haven't gone through all of the things that Joseph has. And yet he remained faithful to his God. He remained true to his calling. He trusted in what the Lord had put in his heart. And God brought it to pass. Even the most horrible things in your past. You know, sometimes we say, oh gosh, I wish I never, did this or that. And while God doesn't take pleasure in our sin, while God doesn't take pleasure in our not walking closely with him, even in that, if we ultimately yield to him and surrender our lives to him, even those things, God will turn around for good. It happened for Joseph. It happened for Rabbi Shaul, the Apostle Paul. He murdered, executed saints of God before God turned it around and used his testimony to the point where 2,000 years later, we still talk about it. And if God can use people like Paul and Joseph and Melech David, King David, a man that God said was a man after his own heart. Yet, the church teaches he committed adultery and murder. Those are horrible sins, but it's actually worse than that. When he tried to, as the church says, have unlawful relations with this woman Bathsheba, she protested. Go and read it. Don't do this, my Lord. But he did. That's not adultery. That's not a consent relationship. That's rape. But yet he had a tender heart. He realized his sin. He repented quickly and wholeheartedly. And God used him. And he will once again sit on the throne in Yerushalayim. What can God do with you? Surrender yourself today. And Yeshua will wash away all of your sin. Follow him. Follow him so closely that there's no daylight between you and him.